In a minute. I was just going to tell everybody to turn my phones off.
Good. I'll give you my sound check.
Gotcha. Okay. Good morning, everybody. If I can have your attention, please. We'll get started in a couple of minutes. I'm going to ask that you all please move to your seats and turn your cell phones off, or at least put them in silent mode at this time. Again, we'll start in a couple of minutes with our panel. Thank you. All right, good morning again, everybody. At this time, I'll remind you again to please turn off your cell phones. And at the end of the panel, you will have an opportunity to ask questions of the panelists. Just come to one of the standing mics. All that we ask is that you identify yourself and come with a question. My name is Adam Kane. I'm the director of Naval Institute Press, and I'd like to welcome you to the first session of the week here at the Operations in Focus stage. This panel, Designing the Fleet to Meet the Mission, is sponsored by Mantech. And before I introduce the moderator of today's panel, I want to invite Sinclair Harris, Senior Executive Director of Naval Business Development and Defense Sector at Mantech, to say a few words.
And good morning, shipmates. That sounds dope. I said good morning, shipmates. Hey, we're paying a lot of money for this thing, so I want to hear some activity, all right? Come on down front. Hey, thank you so much. Mantech is proud to be a sponsor, long-term sponsor for Naval Institute and for AFCEA for the West. Got a great panel. Look, I did 6 tours in the Pentagon, which accounts for about 10% of my mental disability. But what you realize that no matter what the structure is and the changes that go on, it's about getting the requirements right and quickly. And those requirements are changing all the time. So a lot of people who are smarter than I, they're in the fight right now, are going to come talk to you about that. If you have time, please come down and visit us in Mantech booth 1515. Say it after me, 1515. I didn't hear you. 1515, come on down here. We'll talk about cybersecurity. We'll talk about digital twins. We'll talk about all sorts of stuff that you're probably interested in. But I'm turning over to Brett.
Thank you, Admiral, and thank you to the sponsors that make this possible for West. I will be the moderator. I am not going to be presenting anything, but I'm going to be walking you through this discussion today. And the focus for this panel, Designing the Fleet to Meet the Mission, there's a lot of directions, a lot of guidance that seems to be floating. We got a little bit of the insight from the CNO earlier this morning, and that'll kind of color in the background of the discussion. We have what we call the high nines, so the folks that are really looking at matching the real world to requirements so that you can get budgets and resources and get to the sailors what they need in equipment. So we don't have the surface fleet here in 96, but we got the others and the key ones. Again, the panelists, we're going to be discussing the optimal size. We're going to be looking at the structuring, the capabilities, the adaptability in what is a fast-changing world. So the answers that you're going to get today, the only really good ones are going to be the ones that sustain out to like several years into the future, a really hard task. And we're going to try and get into that into the Q&A. One of the focuses is going to be delivery of strike and sustainment of that power from undersea and also to the expeditionary forces. We might also touch on, not directly, but a lot of what is behind the thinking in the Golden Fleet, which is all the rage these days. We'll look at what's required, not in the surface fleet, but how to get the firepower and the capabilities of our Air Force, Naval Air Aviation, into the fight and what's required on that. And so the way the structure is going to be is I'm going to introduce each of the panelists, and we're going to go through, and they're going to have their opening comments. I'll have a few moderated questions to make sure we get to the highlights, but then most importantly, we're going to get to you in the audience, and of course, raise your hand or come up behind those microphones that you see around here, and then we'll get to your questions. And there may be also, for folks out online, may also have a chance to get to them as well. So with that, I want to start first with Admiral Benning. He is the director of the Undersea Warfare Division, the High 997. He has commanded ballistic missile submarines, the Nevada, the Henry M. Jackson. I'm very familiar with the Nevada. And as Commodore, he had a family of these boomers in Squadron 17 in Bangor, Washington. His shore tours include duty as a Tomahawk Strike Officer, Commander of Naval Forces Europe, Assistant Force Nuclear Power Office, Commander Submarine Forces Atlantic. He was the Deputy Commander, Squadron 17, as well as being its commander, Deputy for Strategic Forces, Nuclear Weapons and Force Protection for Commander Submarine Force Pacific Fleet, Sea-Based Deterrence, Branch Head for Director of Undersea Warfare in 97 in the past. So has a history in the strategic deterrence, but also the strike capability that comes from undersea. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Admiral Benning, to give your opening comments.
All right, thank you. Can everybody hear me out there? Okay, great, thanks. Thanks for the kind introduction, and I really look forward to the discussion today on designing the fleet to meet the mission. I'm going to break my comments into two parts. First is going to focus a little bit on requirements, and I think if you heard the CNO talk today about strategy driving capability, I'm going to walk you through how we get to that, and then the second half I'll talk a little bit about the undersea and where we are. So seeing as we're in the 250th anniversary of America, I'm going to start with our founding fathers who were smart enough to understand that we are a maritime nation and that our security and our prosperity depends on a Navy, and that's why they wrote into the Constitution the need to provide and maintain a Navy. That checks with Secretary of Navy's comments, world-class powers have world-class navies. So we know we need a Navy to do what? Congress, in their guidance in Title X, gave us a clear mission that we're supposed to be manned, trained, and equipped for sustained combat operations at sea. That was an enduring mission for a long time. In 2003, they updated that, and they added a second mission to that. And in that, it was man, train, and equip in order to conduct peacetime operations that promote the safety, the security, and the prosperity of America. So that's recognizing the Navy as a deployed force. The Navy is global, and the Navy has a role outside of just pure combat. I think that checks very nicely with the CNO's work that he's doing to frame both the Navy warfighting concept to get after that sustained combat operations at sea, and also the other, 95 to 98% of the time where we do deterrence, so that Navy deterrent concept that he's working on, deter who from doing what and when. So those things align. We then get additional guidance from our national security strategy from the administration and the national defense strategy from Department of War. And that's really guiding us to defend the homeland and to deter China through strength. And so that is guiding our force design and really what Golden Fleet is all about. So given all those roles, responsibilities, requirements, now it's the Navy's work to work with kind of three primary communities. The intel community to understand the current threat and the evolution of that arc, where it's going in the future. To work with our warfighters to understand what equipment they need right now and their evolving concept of operation, so what we need to provide them in the future in order to be successful. And then really you, industry, getting industry engaged to understand what is within the realm of the possible. Where's technology going? How do we incorporate that so we can maintain our advantage? I think if you get those three things right, it's critical to ensuring we get the right mix of capability to the right hands of the operators at the right time and the right place so that they can ensure the freedom of the seas, they can deter adversaries, and if necessary, they can win decisively in battle. So getting this right is a lot of what the work right now going on in the N9 Directorate. So you've heard of acquisition transformation. We are also working requirements reform. Those go hand in hand, kind of two sides of the same coin. The work on the requirement side is pretty exciting, and we're moving out on that. So that is really, I think, three primary things. There's a lot of findings that we're working through right now, but one is we need to streamline and simplify requirements generation. We cannot take years and years to define bespoke, complex, very specific requirements. We need to broaden those, we need to go quicker, and we need to streamline them. Second part is we need to integrate the warfighter, and we need to integrate industry sooner so we can give some broader requirements and then take feedback from the warfighter, what they need, industry, what they can deliver, so we can define the requirements in something that's producible now, has the ability to evolve to match the threat. And the final thing is we need the flexibility and agility in these requirements so that we can adapt them. So whether something changes and there's concerns, we run into concerns in industry or the warfighter, or more importantly, we see opportunities and we can adjust those requirements so we can incorporate an opportunity and advanced capability. So that's really, and we're happy to answer more questions on requirements reform. That's where we're working through right now, hand in hand with that acquisition reform, so that at the end of the day, it's going to work together in a kind of a synergistic manner. From my focus as N97, Director of Undersea Warfare, we have an absolute asymmetric advantage in the undersea. It's my job to make sure we retain that. I've got my team laser focused on that, and part of that is adapting the current force. How do we bring in technology into the current force to make sure it maintains ahead of the threat? And the key to that is capability and force growth across kind of our four lines of effort. I'm going to talk ballistic missile submarines, guided missile submarines, attack submarines, and robotic autonomous systems. So on the ballistic missile side, it's the inherent survivability and that overwhelming destructive power, the nature of that force, that is the ultimate hedge that the nation has against strategic attack, potential strategic attack against the U.S. Our focus today is really on investing to sustain and modernize the Ohio so that it can deliver the same capability on its last day, which is going to be in the 2040s, as it did on its first day, which was in the 1980s. In parallel, we're working really hard to drive the production and delivery of Columbia. That's the replacement capability that's going to carry that. That's going to give you the technology, the modernization. It's going to give us the stealth, the performance, and really the updatability required to carry that mission into the 2080s. So a lot of work to go on there, and happy to discuss that a little bit more. The capability and operations of our multi-mission attack platforms are just eye-watering, and they're providing the warfighter what he needs across a lot of mission sets. From the Los Angeles class to Seawolf to Virginia, the force is just unmatched, and we're working to maintain it that way. So there's kind of three lines of effort in that. First and foremost is on Virginia. We're in the midst of building Block 5 and getting ready to start Block 6, and that's that replacement capability for the GN strike capacity. So that's in production right now. Our Block 7 and 8, we're finishing the design on that, which is going to allow us to incorporate some additional capability. It's going to go back to a shorter hull and give us that capacity we need for that multi-mission role. And then finally, we're at the beginning stages of defining what is SSNX and what does it need to be in order to carry that mission out into the future. A platform we'll be designing and building in the 2040s. That's going to give us the space, the weight, the modularity, and really exciting. It's going to be the first time we're able to really design unmanned systems from the ground up into that platform. And so whether it be the power requirements, the data requirements, the payload requirements, the ocean interfaces, those sort of things, is going to be really exciting on the SSNX front. And then finally, on the fourth kind of line of effort, there's robotic autonomous systems, and really kind of look under that under two lenses. There's those that are deployable from submarines and those that are not. From the deployed on submarines, they're really there. They're going to extend the reach of the submarine. They're going to extend the capability of the submarine. It's the way we can add capability and insert technology quickly. It can be attritable and low cost, or it may be more and expendable, or it could be more exquisite, in which we have the torpedo tube launch and recovery capability that brings that back in, allows us to refurb it and send it back out and reuse it. On the non-submarine deployed side, that's given you that additional endurance, the capacity, and the capability needed to provide the warfighter either independent capability where we don't have manned submarines, or to complement the manned submarines in their mission. So I'm happy to talk about that some more. So at the end of the day, that's kind of where we are both in requirements form and kind of my initial look from an undersea perspective. And I'll pause there and turn it over to Admiral Washi.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Admiral Benning. A little background on Admiral Washi before I let him give his opening comments. Obviously an aviator. Commanded VFA 15 on board the TR, and also the George Bush, I believe, during Operation Enduring Freedom. Commanded at Carrier Air Wing 5 as part of forward deployed Naval Forces Japan, a piece of territory and an ally that's very key as we look forward. So that experience, be interested how that folds into your comments and the requirements. A Top Gun instructor, F-22 operational director, chief of cyberspace, electronic warfare operations. That electronic warfare and cyber is key as we start to look at pairing and teaming between manned and unmanned. So having you on this panel, I think, is very key, and also at this moment in time in the Pentagon at N98, and is the high 9 for air warfare. Let's see what else on this one. Also has experience in N9 overall, but also with strike group forces in NATO. So another interesting set of dynamics with the allies and partners that I think also might inform the requirements. But with that, I'll stop and turn it over to you, Admiral.
Hey, thanks, Brent. Good morning. It is a privilege to be here with all of you here at West. I will start with an apology. I'm a single-seat fighter pilot, generally by trade. I have about 10,000 weapon system officers behind me that are talking forward. So the Q&A might take a couple of rounds to actually make sure I understand the question. We gather today under the clear mandate of the 2026 National Defense Strategy to prioritize the defense of the American people and restore peace through strength. As you heard Mark say, America is a maritime nation, and for 250 years, the United States Navy has delivered in defense of our nation. So I approach this conversation, this discussion, from two distinct views. As a former strike group commander, looking across the waterfront at my former flagship, USS Carl Vinson, and a view from the Pentagon as the Director of Air Warfare, shaping the force that they will inherit. My direct customer are those 100,000 battle-ready sailors of naval aviation to make sure they have what they need to fight and win. As the CNO's fighting instructions made clear, and as you heard from him this morning, we can no longer rely on assumptions of uncontested dominance. We need hard-nosed realism in our requirements, and we must deliver differentiated value, absolute sea control and sea denial when and where it matters most. And there is no better differentiated value than a carrier strike group. The carrier remains the hard backstop of American power. Under our new architecture that you heard from the CNO, it serves as the main battle force of the General Purpose Force. It provides the air superiority required for sea control. It is also a hedge against adversary first mover advantage through being able to surge overwhelming combat firepower to the point of crisis. And that is why we must ruthlessly ensure our carrier fleet is combat surge ready through the Global Maritime Response Plan. And the goal is to keep carrier strike groups ready and capable of pivoting instantly. While being ready, we must also evolve. As the Director of Air Warfare, I'm broadly responsible for three large portfolios: the carrier striking arm of the United States Navy, the carrier and their air wings, maritime and ISR and T forces, and nuclear command and control, very critical to what you just heard Mark talk about. And this evolution is happening before your eyes. As Vinson resets here for her next deployment, on the East Coast, Dory Miller is being built to replace her. 33% more combat power, 3 times more power generation for directed energy when ready, more overall capacity. The air wings are evolving in stride as well, as we scale 5th generation fighters, F-35Cs, to every strike group. Our first carrier-based remote autonomous system, the MQ-25, ready for her first flight, while we operate autonomous MQ-4 ISR&T around the globe today. And in the future, as you heard CNO talk about, a 6th generation fighter and collaborative combat aircraft to form up with that carrier air wing, all that bring the range, persistence, and lethality to hedge for those highly contested environments. All those changes are coming. So the central question, I think, for this panel to discuss here is not whether we need that change. The NDS mandates it. The real question is, can we evolve naval aviation forces, naval forces, the carrier strike group fast enough? And that is the challenge for everybody in this room. We must work together to achieve it. American prosperity depends on free and open sea lanes that we deliver, and we must continue to evolve to deliver. And that is the challenge I hope we can unpack together today. So thank you, and let's get to work.
Thank you, Admiral Washi. And now the final member of the panel, David Chase, or should I say retired Navy Captain Chase, with many years of service on Expeditionary Force, FDNF, the Forward Deployed Naval Force in Yokosuka, Japan, commanding the frigate, the Vandergrift, also the Avenger, it's another small boat, not in Japan, Marine countermeasures vessel in 1999 to 2001. He is currently the Deputy Director for the Expeditionary Warfare Division, otherwise known as OPNAV N95. He was selected in 2023 as a Senior Executive Service, SCS, where he currently serves, working a host of issues in N95. And we'll get deep into the questions about how we're going to address the issues of the NDS as well as the NSS. Prior to his time at N95, he was also had another assignment at N8. This is the Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Integration of Capabilities and Resources. So another angle, another man who has been there, done that in the operational world, but also understands the requirements and the process in the Pentagon deeply. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, David, for your opening comments.
Great. Thanks, Brent. Can you hear me okay? Great. So well, thank you so much, and thanks AFCEA for this, and also the Naval Institute. It's an honor to be able to speak to you today. I'm representing my boss, who regrets not being able to be here today. That's General Lee Meyer, call sign Country. He's out at Capstone right now, so I was happy to be able to fill in for him. I do appreciate the panel theme, designing the fleet to meet the mission. Frankly, when I thought about that, it is what we do just about every day in N95 to support the mission of the United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps, specifically in the expeditionary forces. I'm going to talk briefly about our 3 priorities. It's not an all exhaustive. I suspect we'll get into a little more of what N95 does in the Q&A, but I am going to talk about our 3 top priorities. Number 1 is maintaining 31 ready amphibious ships. The second is procuring the medium landing ship. And the third is delivering and improving our mine countermeasure capabilities and mission packages. Before I get rolling, I do want to emphasize and you may have heard about that this morning or drawn that from the CNO's comments, his relationship with the Commandant, frankly among the best. And I've been in this position for 2+ years, as you heard, but also in the Pentagon, and one of the tightest, closest relationships I've seen in my time between a Commandant of the Marine Corps and a Chief of Naval Operations. I'm borrowing from a recent CNO note to the fleet. The CNO views the Navy Marine Corps team as the Joint Forces Global Hedge, forward deployed, postured, ready to respond to a variety of threats at a time and place of our choosing. So now the top priorities, maintaining at least 31 ready amphibious ships. And I'm often asked, why 31? Principally because it's in law. We are statutorily required to maintain no less than 31 ships. But more important to that, that does provide the amphibious lift for our Marine Expeditionary Units, which are multi-domain, combat-credible formations for combatant commander campaigning, crisis response, and contingency operations. And there's 2 principal components when we think about how do we maintain 31 amphibs in N95. The first component is new construction. We are taking advantage of multi-ship procurements. We're building the America class large deck LHAs, which are replacing our LHDs, and we're building the San Antonio class Flight 2 LPDs, which are replacing our aging LSDs. We're also building ship-to-shore connectors, which are replacing our LCACs, and we're also building utility landing craft, which are replacing our LCU 1610 class, which are over 50 years old. Some of the capabilities that we're introducing in the LPD class, as well as the LHA, advanced capabilities include Joint Strike Fighter mods, Enterprise Air Search Radar, and the Slick 32 Victor 6 electronic warfare improvements. We're also doing critical upgrades to our hull mechanical and electrical systems to support future power generation needs. Together, these ships and the connectors are the foundation of the Amphibious Readiness Group and our Marine Expeditionary Units of today and well into the future. The second component of maintaining 31 amphibs is ensuring their operational availability of the in-service ships. And fundamental to that goal is a commitment to induct our LPDs into their midlife modernization starting in the next couple of years, as well as extending the life of select WASP-class LHDs. Equally important are ongoing initiatives to improve readiness and focus on maintenance performance. We're focused on better planning and better forecasting for material and targeted acquisition strategies. The first three ships in what is called the signature availabilities are amphibs, and we're expanding our partnership with industry in several ways. Something called the pit stop strategy. We've proven that with our diesel overhauls, and we're expanding that to other troubled systems on board our amphibs. We're doing targeted scope contracts with original equipment manufacturers for boiler work, and we're also expanding that to other high-risk systems on our amphibs. And we're deeply involved in additive and advanced manufacturing for limited and obsolete parts. Second priority, procuring the medium landing ship. It's been asked, why do we need this ship? At 4,000 tons and a range of approximately 3,400 nautical miles, this ship will fill a capability gap between our smaller, short-range landing craft and our globally deployable multi-purpose amphibs. LSM meets a critical Marine Corps force design. It will be able to maneuver and sustain Marine littoral regiments, both supplies and equipment, across intra-theater distances in contested open ocean and littoral conditions. It will have the ability to both embark and disembark expeditionary forces in beach areas, as well as austere integrated ports, enabling distributed maneuver. And with this ship, we are taking an innovative acquisition approach. We're using a proven commercial design from the Dutch company Damen. We're building a non-developmental build-to-print product. The intent is to reduce risk and allow scaled production. And our plan is to competitively award a vessel construction manager to oversee the program, drive execution, and facilitate competition among multiple shipyards. Our third priority, delivering and improving our mine countermeasure mission packages. And I would say, frankly, mine warfare, I'm slightly biased based on my biography, but mine warfare is frankly no less important than the first two priorities I discussed. The mission is benefiting significantly from improvements in cutting-edge underwater unmanned technology, especially acoustic and optical sensors, computing power, and AI and machine learning to improve mine detection and reduce our post-mission analysis time. We're procuring 24 MCM mission packages for the Independence variant littoral combat ship and our expeditionary MCM companies. The first three mission packages on the LCS arrived in the 5th Fleet this past summer, allowing us to retire the venerable MCM-1 class of ships, the Avenger class, in Bahrain. And we're working diligently on the 7th Fleet Challenge to be able to replace those MCMs as well in the next couple of years. This MCM mission package exemplifies the close cooperation between government, and industry in the Navy's first operational deployment of an unmanned surface vehicle, the MCM USV. Using robotic, unmanned, and autonomous platforms, vehicles, and systems, we are actually at the point where we are removing the man from the minefield. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today. It's certainly a dynamic and exciting time for expeditionary warfare, especially for the amphibious and mine countermeasure surface forces. I look forward to questions during the Q&A period.
Thank you, David. So now we're going to enter into the moderated panel section. But again, remember, I'm going to be coming to the audience. So be developing your questions and moving towards those microphones over the course of the next 10, 15 minutes. So the first one that's going to get my questions is Admiral Bennett. So it's no secret the SSGN has been a huge carrier of Tomahawk strike power for the fleet. And it's reaching the point of no return where they have to be retired. And it's going to take a huge chunk out of the Navy's strike capability, at least from sea, not the air delivery type. What are the requirements? What are you looking at to make up for that? And then to kind of go to a slightly pivot to another one, you mentioned the Columbia. We have a similar problem with competitors changing the number of weapons they're fielding. The Chinese come to mind. The strategic threat. How are we going to maintain the adequate at-sea second strike nuclear deterrent capacity? Not the capability, but the capacity. And how's that driving your requirements today?
All right. Hey, thanks for the question. I'll take the first part on the how are we, I think, recapitalizing the SSGN strike capability. Wonderful capability. You know, we took the first 4 SSBNs, we converted those, and they are worth their weight in gold, the capability they provide, the large strike volume in one platform. We're not replacing that, but we are recovering that strike capability. We're gonna disperse that, and that is the Virginia payload module. So that is our Block 5 and 6 investments. We added 4 vertical tubes into the middle of the Virginia. Those tubes will add an additional strike capacity and raise the Virginia strike capacity from 12 Tomahawks to 40 Tomahawks. So that's a 3-fold increase. So we have the right numbers to recover all of the kind of strike capacity. It will just be distributed across a force, which will provide more options to the warfighters, but you will recapture all that capability in that platform. In addition, that platform is going to be built and we're working on the implementation of conventional prompt strike. So that is a long-range hypersonic strike weapon that will be launched from those Virginia payload modules. Plan is for 3 per tube. That gives a very unique strike capability and unique weapon. Adds to that conventional deterrent role that all of our general purpose forces play. They are conventional deterrence, and then we have strategic deterrence on the Ohio and Columbia side. So that's how we're getting after that. Block 5, Block 6, one of the ways we're working to make that as producible as we can is we're limiting our requirements appetite. We are keeping a consistent design between Block 5 and 6, stable design, so that we can produce it. We'll make targeted investments in the capabilities we need to make it viable, but we are trying to minimize the changes so that it is focused on speed to production, speed to deliver to the fleet. Second question, I think, was on capacity for Columbia. So Columbia, as you know, we went from 24 tubes on Ohio with the new start, which just recently expired. That was limited to 20 tubes, and Columbia is going to go down to 16 tubes. Based on the requirements from STRATCOM is what's going to drive what we go do. Then our guidance on Columbia has always been a minimum of 12 Columbias, and that minimum was built in because the threat gets a vote. As the threat evolves and changes, we may need to change that requirement. STRATCOM and Secretary of War and Department of War are evaluating what that is going forward, and then we will respond as needed if we have to procure additional Columbias. In addition to capacity, we are looking at this in a way with the Trident missile system. How can we evolve that to provide some more flexibility and capability? And that's the work Admiral Wolf is doing at SSP, and that's the Trident 2 D5 Life Extension 2 efforts, which will field in the late 30s.
Thanks. Admiral Walsh, when it comes to the air wing, it's less about the aircraft carrier, but you really can't separate the platform from the air wing. But kind of moving a little bit away, just looking at the threat, the Chinese are fielding very long-range air-to-air missiles that really hold our air wing at threat. And it's a problem also from their surface ships as well as their submarines with the ability to strike our carrier strike group at range with less warning time. How are your requirements evolving to kind of match this and get ahead of the Chinese threat so that we can outstick them, but also to be able to sustain the sortie rate over the targets in highly contested areas?
Yeah, thanks, Brent. I think I'll answer it kind of in two parts. One, I'll talk about it generically, and then we'll get to some more down into some specific programs to answer some of those things. I would say guided by the fighting instructions you heard from the CNO, I go back to we must be designed to deliver that differentiated value, sea control and sea denial, which requires air superiority in the Indo-Pacific, which requires anchoring the general purpose force, carrier strike groups, make sure they're combat surge ready. We've got to keep them ready while modernizing simultaneously. Ultimately, as I mentioned in my opening comments, we're in transition now. E2Cs to E2Ds, F-18s to F-35Cs. We're about to fly our first remote autonomous system, MQ-25, first carrier capable. We have a lot of experience, obviously, flying MQ-4s. Ultimately, we need to make the switch to integrate sixth-generation fighters and collaborative combat aircraft, as you heard the CNO talk about, which will give us some decisive finishers in that highly contested Indo-Pacific environment. Specifically, I think to your mix, I would bring up, I think, 2 points, because it's one, not just about the collaborative combat aircraft and what is the actual percentage. I can't look at the room and say I think the percentage is going to be X. You even heard CNO kind of say the same thing. Is it 50-50? What is it? To your point, China wants in on nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. They also recognize the differentiated value to be able to sail around the world with that combat power. To contend with those threats, you talk about first. You heard CNO talk about building very robust counter ISR&T capabilities. Couple that with the inherent maneuverability of nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, and then both increasing range and mass from our aircraft carrier. So that's where we get into development of that sixth-generation platform and following very fast on the heels of the MQ-25 collaborative combat aircraft to operate forward, to sense, to jam, to screen, that then allows our main battle force, right now F-35Cs and F-18s, switching to F-35Cs and sixth-generation platforms in the next decade to penetrate, survive, and deliver that decisive blow. To get to kind of the last part of the question, what is the optimum number? I think it's more about measuring the effects that we're trying to generate at the range that we need to generate. So we're scaling weapons too, which is the payloads are part of this conversation. Our MACE hypersonic weapon that we're looking to rapidly prototype and scale very fast, not a 10-year development program, but a couple of year development program, and then moving to a world where we can get non-traditional vendors, et cetera, to compete for on-manned and cheaper platforms, so we can figure out, as we learn fast, the quantity and mix of weapons that we need. I can't tell you what that final mix is going to be. What I can tell you is that I'm very bullish on robots and low-cost, high-mass weapons to deliver the effects that we need in the Western Pacific.
One just point of clarification. Did I hear right? The MQ-25 is going to be, you're already looking at new missions beyond like the tanking role?
Yeah, so that we said up front, the beauty of the most survivable airfield on the planet is that it is the most survivable airfield on the planet. I can relocate very long distances over a single day. Maybe the one arguable downside is that I have about 4.5 acres of sovereign U.S. Real estate, which means you have to earn your right to fly off of that flight deck. And so MQ-25, very important first mission, take off and land from an aircraft carrier and deliver air refueling so that I can buy back weapons onto my F-18s. A single MQ-25 replaces 5 F-18 sorties, so think about the force generation that generates when we actually scale that platform. But that is going to open the floodgates, in my humble opinion, because the on-man control stations will be there. We'll have learned iteratively on that platform and then follow very closely with collaborative combat aircraft after that.
Thank you very much. All right, David. You mentioned the national security strategy, the national defense strategy, very explicitly. The first time, and somewhat for someone involved in the crafting of those before, very explicitly talks about denying the Chinese in the first island chain, and that the Department of War, and I really think it's the Navy, when you look at the Marine Corps and the Navy together, they have to execute this denial strategy. How is that driving your requirements? What capabilities do you have today that will be key in that mission set? And what's coming down the line to further enhance our ability to deny the Chinese that first island chain?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brett. I think I'll start from large and then go to small. I talked a little bit about our globally deployable amphibious force, and again, that's LPDs, that's LHAs, supporting amphibious lift and the Marine Expeditionary Units. That is, and will continue to be for the foreseeable future our principal means of projecting power where it needs to be projected. I will say that that said, the capabilities today are extraordinary, but over time, and part of what we're looking at closely in both the Marine Corps and the Navy are working together on through force design and capability assessments and ongoing studies is what that future ARG will carry. We took a pause with LHA 6 and 7. They were aviation-focused platforms. With the Bougainville, we are now back to both aviation and reintroduce a well deck. Currently, what comes out of those well decks are connectors and landing craft. The future, that's a vast space that can house anything from robotic and autonomous systems to other capabilities. So that mission is going to continue to evolve, and really, frankly, as a tailored force, as the CNO mentioned, others have talked about in the future. That will be something we're looking closely at. Secondly, I talked about the medium landing ship. Again, the beauty of the medium landing ship, and we're talking currently about building 18 up to a requirement of 35 of those vessels in the next 10 to 12 years. Again, I talked about an innovative acquisition approach, a build to print. We believe that we will be able to build those quickly and deliver that capability overseas. And what that will provide is that agility and the flexibility in austere environments. And that's without the benefit of ports. You think about places, not bases. The Expeditionary Advanced Basing operation that the Marine Corps is moving toward, putting those vessels and those lethal Marine Corps forces in places where they can set the battle space inside of the WES, where they can move in, set up, affect the adversary's calculations, and quickly reset, regenerate, and move to another location. That's what that vessel and that's what those small lethal Marine Corps units will be able to provide. Again, operating across vast spaces and island to island. Something I didn't talk about in my comments, beginning comments, and this is something that is unique to N95, we have a broad and diverse portfolio. We also have mining in our portfolio, and we talk about our ability to affect outcomes in that area that you were asked about, Brent. Mm-hmm. We are aggressively pursuing new mining capabilities. I would say, and this is somewhat charitable, our mining has atrophied, and we are focused on it once again. Everything from clandestine delivered mines that will rely on UUVs, a new program called Hammerhead, which is an encapsulated torpedo, quick strike extended range mines. We're putting wing kits and tail kits on those quick strike mines to be able to deliver those at distance and range, partnering with the Air Force principally to get those mines to where they need to be. And finally, or actually two final points I want to make about how we're affecting and be able to sustain in that critical area, naval special warfare. That also is in our portfolio. The key there is their ability to operate in places clandestinely and bring capabilities through key capabilities such as loitering munitions. And finally, our Navy Expeditionary Combat Force. Think about Seabees, but also think about our expeditionary logistics support forces. Those also are in our portfolio, often don't get as much time and attention, but we're talking about port damage repair, airfield damage repair, as well as vertical launch reload capability through our expeditionary logistics support groups. So a lot to consume there. All those brought together in combination are how we see ourselves now and in the future.
One quick follow-up, and then I'm going to come for the final question with Admiral Benning about the SSNX. So this is the time to start coming to the microphones. On the LSM, the medium landing ship, the Dutch LST-100, any opportunities there for requirements to be modified or new requirements or opportunities that the group might be, I guess, interested to hear about?
Sure, thanks, Brent. Potentially. The part of the plan for the medium landing ship is to, what I would say is control the appetite. We had a ship about 2 years ago known as a light amphibious warship. And part of the reason that law did not succeed is because our appetite became too large and the ship became unaffordable. So we reset. We looked at what we need this LSM to be able to do. We went with a proven design, build to print, and we have based on the Marine Corps and the Navy's requirements, we'll be putting on what I would consider fairly standard government furnished equipment. And again, those are some commercial-based capabilities where there's navigation radars. It will have self-defense capabilities. There may be opportunities, but to keep that ship affordable and get it to the warfighter as quickly as possible, it's not going to be an exquisite solution. That's consistent with probably everything you've heard here earlier, but also in the conference thus far.
Thanks, David. All right, Admiral Benning, last question from the moderator, and then we're going to go to the questions in the audience. The next generation attack submarine. The last time that we were kind of at this moment was the Cold War was coming to a close in the Seawolf. Kind of curious as to how the world is helping define the requirements and what you're seeing the demands on this next generation attack boat.
Sure, great question. So on SSNX, so Virginia is a fantastic platform. It continues to operate in eye-watering fashion out in real-world ops. So, but it's a design that was in the 90s. So we're pushing almost 30 years now, and it's got some inherent structural demands on it that you can only modify and adjust it so much. It's got ability to continue to be modernized, and we're doing that with Block 7 and 8, as I said. But we also recognize that a lot has changed since the 1990s, and so this new platform, SSNX, what we're beginning the design on is kind of four things I think we're really looking at. One is presence. We want to get after building this in a different manner, designing in a different manner that makes it more maintainable. Can we get out of the large large maintenance cycles and do maybe more limited maintenance more frequently so that we get out of these long enduring ones that are hard to get out of? Can we add some speed to it so we can reposition? One of the differentiating values that in the U.S. Navy fighting instructions is mobility. Can we get some more speed out of it so we have more mobility? At the end of the day, it's got to be lethal. And so how do we bring in, and the thing that's really changed in that space, and I mentioned it in my opening remarks, was robotic autonomous systems. So Virginia was not designed with that in mind. We've been able to incorporate it. This will be a ship that we go design from the ground up. What does that mean? What do we do with power? What do we do with payload capacity? What do we do with interface standards? How do we handle the data? We can reimagine different ocean interfaces so we can use small to large to medium, those sort of kind of things, all into SSNX, which provide us a very high end. If you think of a high-low mix, I don't want to think of Virginia as a low mix, but a high-low mix, those are going to provide us the capability we need. There's a lot of anti-access area denial efforts in the surface and in the air, and it is being focused on in the undersea as well. So we need to make sure we stay ahead of that. So survivability, lethality, and going through a whole clean sheet design will give us the flexibility to carry that forward. So hopefully that answers.
Yeah, thank you very much, Admiral. So for the audience, we'll go first here and then next. So please.
Kai Alberg, U.S. Naval Institute. Question on the recently announced Defiant-class battleship. How does putting that much capability and cost into a single platform square with the concept of distributed maritime operations? Are we moving away from that? And secondly, also on the Defiant, how do we avoid the experience we had with the Zumwalt class as to cost and time to deployment overruns fielding a completely new and very large platform?
Yeah. So great question. Unfortunately, we don't have the surface warfare guys here to kind of really kind of dig into the. But I will probably hand this off to Admiral Washington and Admiral Benning to kind of talk about how what they're doing in the air and the submarine side gets to the strike piece.
Yeah, so it does not walk away from distributed maritime operations, adding additional capacity, strike capacity, the volume of fires, the magazine depth we're going to need to go to the next fight is what the battleship brings. It brings that command and control capability you need, but it also brings, similar to what I just mentioned on the SSNX, it's going to bring that space weight power cooling capability to give you the depth that we need. It's part of our future naval force structure design. We've had large large and small surface combatants. In the DDGX, we were always kind of making trades between, do I do this weapon system or that? The battleship gives us the ability to bring both of that. So it will be a high-end capable, able to mass long-range fires and do that in a manner that is survivable and supports the warfighter needs. And that will be part of a high-low mix in the fleet. So we'll have battleships, we'll have high-end destroyers, we'll have frigates, and they will work together in a distributed maritime ops kind of pattern. So no, it doesn't walk away from that, it supports that, sir. Did you have anything on that?
And I would just kind of add on that as part of the Golden Fleet effort as we scale up, as Mark talked about. A couple of things go along with that. And I think he hit on one of the key points is adding in that additional swap capability, the growth capability, and a larger platform to basically future-proof or give yourself the opportunity, which is exactly what we're doing on the Ford class with 33% more combat power generation, 3 times the power generation for directed energy weapons when ready, et cetera. And all the while, we're going to be looking to upgrade the ISR&T platforms that go along with those, from future vertical lift from the decks of those battleships, future destroyers, and future aircraft carriers.
Great. Thank you. Next.
Thanks, Brent. Michael Jabley. For the three of you, this is kind of a jump ball. I want to reference what C.N.O. Caudle said this morning about one of his issues is that we continue to look at unmanned through a domain-centric lens. And so when I look at the creation of DAS-NRAS and PAE-RAS, and I understand that a portfolio acquisition executive starts to take some of the flavor of what has traditionally been a resource sponsor's role. My question is this: short of creation and resurrection of OPNAV in '99, for those of you who remember that, how are the three of you setting unmanned requirements? Admiral Benning, you talked about it very well in setting the platform requirements to employ unmanned, but for the unmanned vehicles themselves, how are we doing that going forward and working with PAE-RAS and DAS-NRAS?
I'll take an initial shot at that. So good question. I think if Admiral Caudle, though, talked about two things. So the way we generate and deploy and offer forces is a tried and true model, right? From maintenance to training to certification to deployment. And we do that under domain-centric kind of approach. So domain-centric has a role in RAS. That's how it's going to be delivered. That's going to be packaged. It's really what he talked about then when we operate it. How do we go operate? Because he was talking about potentially how do you fuse these together that deliver. They're really a cross-domain kind of capability. So we're going to set the requirements, one, so that we understand how to generate them and develop them. We've got to figure out with the warfighter the training. So that's where I think live virtual constructive comes in. How do we, and that was in part of my requirements, was bringing in industry and bringing in intel and bringing in the warfighter sooner to kind of experiment, figure out what works, what doesn't work, and then iterate on that, get it into the hands of the operator from a fleet implementation program so that they can learn how to sustain it, they can learn how to operate, they can feed back to industry on changes they'd like to see, but doing that in a controlled manner where we have block approaches or flight approaches or so. We want to, okay, we'll produce it. I'd rather take 80% now, and then we'll work towards that 100% capability. So that's making sure we get the requirements right. And then the RAS portfolio, what it does, it allows them to see across surface, undersea, air, and make sure we're not duplicative in what we're doing, make sure they all talk together if they're supposed to or need to, and making sure we have that connective tissue so they can fight in a cross-domain kind of manner. So hopefully that answers. I'll see if you've got any other.
Yeah, I think I would just add on top of that what Mark talked about. There is a certain amount of overlapping concentric circles, right? That you need that domain expertise where it makes sense, and then in certain instances you might not need it as much. Like in my case, MQ-25 and CCA are first and foremost airplanes, very big airplanes in many cases, and so that domain expertise is absolutely critical to make sure we get after all the .MLPF that the CNO talked about as part of the Foundry, to make sure we can force generate it and it's sustainable and it makes sense when we actually employ it on behalf of the combatant commanders. So I think that is a critical piece of it. You are right in that to get after what the Secretary of War is after, and we're all after it, and everybody in this room I know is after it, is to move out with speed and urgency given the pacing threat, is that we're just trying to look for any opportunity, any efficiencies in being able to go faster together. And so that's where those two things, I think, come together.
Yeah, and lastly, I would say that I'm pretty much focused on the undersea, particularly with my expeditionary MCM capabilities, and whether it's systems like the Mark 18 UUV, we're improving that. We are relying on partnering with industry, but I think the value of what the PA RAS has brought to us, we're already leveraging other systems that are in the N97 portfolio, some things that frankly we hadn't either didn't know about or didn't know enough about until we started working closely with the PA RAS. And one of our challenges is always getting deeper, faster when it comes to mine countermeasures. We are seeing the value of the PA RAS. We have a system called the Defender, Video Array Defender Remote Operating Vehicle, and through the PA RAS, we're already finding potentially other solutions to improve the ability to do that. So I see goodness in PA RAS, and there's other certainly in our Naval Special Warfare community as well.
Thank you all very much.
All right, thank you. Next question.
All right, hey, good morning, everybody. Matt Culp, retired Navy captain. Good to see all of you.
Good to see you.
My question is also PAE RAS related, but we've seen in the Ukraine the enormous warfighting value of proliferated autonomous systems. But it seems in the Indo-Pacific, the combat credibility of those systems is challenged just due to the fact that many of them lack sort of a credible ride to the fight. That is, how do you get them there? How do you sustain them there in a way that really is survivable inside of an increasingly, thick and then more distant WES? So, as each of you, as domain owners and also as sort of the large platform owners in the Navy, curious to know how, and as you think about integrating robotic and unmanned systems, and as you think about requirements reform, how do you each think about solving that ride to the fight to make those systems fully combat credible, and how do you do that at scale? Thanks.
All right. Great question. I'll take it from the undersea first. So as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we kind of view it under two lenses, those that are employable or deployable from a submarine and those that aren't, so the large, extra large. So from a submarine perspective, I think we solve some of your concerns on how do you get it there, how do you sustain it, how do you maintain it. And again, there's different flavors of those. If they're low cost and they're not exquisite, they could be expendable or tritable. We've got the ability for the more exquisite ones to bring them back on board and use us. So they really just extend the capability and reach of the platform, make the manned platform more effective. What you're talking about, I think, on the second part is more of our large and extra large and our non-submarine deployed RAS. And there is a challenge. So the undersea domain is a harsh domain, right? It's from the pressures, the depths, the temperatures, the currents, the tides, the nets, the fishing activity, the biofouling, you name it. that is a lot to ask of a vehicle to be out there for an extended period of time and self-heal and self-operate and make sure it knows what it's doing. So that is just an inherent challenge that makes unmanned undersea a little more challenging. The lack of persistent comms, the lack of persistent navigation add to that complexity, and it really drives the need for a very exquisite, reliable autonomy that you can do. And we're working through that. So battery power, endurance is coming there. That's pretty good. It's really the autonomy, and we're working through that. It is a challenging environment in the undersea, more specific, but we're learning a lot from the air and the surface and what's happening there and how you maintain them. But that is a key piece that makes those larger ones a little more challenging right now.
Yeah, I think what I would add on to that is our battle buddy Van over there from the Digital Warfare Office. There are no bombs without the comms, which this is all the networking capability to stitch the autonomous systems together, both manned and non-manned platforms, is super critical as part of this effort. Because I think you hit the nail on the head, and you heard CNO talk about it this morning, is people get a little bit focused on the war in Ukraine, but you're talking about kilometers, not thousands of nautical miles. The geography and the geometry makes a difference there, and so you need to be able to stitch the capabilities, and thus the purpose behind, of course, distributed maritime operations, distribute the force, but mass effects when and where we need to, and that is absolutely front and center in our robotic and autonomous systems strategy.
Hey, Matt. Great to see you. Yeah, from a N95 expeditionary warfare perspective, it is our biggest challenge. And the systems that we are developing and intend to field, we have to look across and have been working closely with INDOPACOM and PAC Fleet on what we call the .MOPF, right? It's not just a matter of getting that thing out to the warfighter. It has to have, there's got to be doctrine, there's got to be an organization, C2, there's material issues, there's platforms, right? For us, especially when I mentioned mines earlier, we need to develop the means to get those mines where they need to be. Same thing with one-way attack. Those are critical systems that will be game-changing systems that we're working closely to ensure that we have the ability, and harking back to the LSM again, that's a ship that will have the ability to move people, parts, ordnance, equipment in the theater where it needs to be. So that is a resource that we will, again, we're probably a decade away, but it is a resource to be able to get some of the things that I mentioned in the theater and able to affect the warfight.
Thanks. Next question.
Hi, Mallory Shelbourne with USNI News. My question's for all three of you. Can you talk about what's coming down the pipe for the OPNAV reorganization, and how will that reorg function with the reorg of the PEOs to PAEs?
So we are looking at an OPNAV redesign really to better align the functions and operations of OPNAV in order to support the CNO and make sure that it's better align it with the fleet and the way the fleet operates, so that we know who to connect to and how to align missions and requirements to make sure we get the right capability. Nothing's changed at this point in time, but we're evaluating that to make sure it's better positioned to support the CNO and the fleet.
Okay.
I think I would just, add on that we're certainly looking to redesign for the in acquisition and requirements, for speed to deliver capability to the warfighters, what we already talked about. But what won't get replaced is the domain experts that you see up here, the warfighters that came fresh from the fleet and go into the building to make sure we're advocating for those battle-ready sailors on their behalf.
Yeah, the only other additional comment I will make is as we think about to be frank, my day job hasn't changed. What I am seeing through the PAE reorganization, though, and there's a critical component of that, which OPNAV will still have direct input into the PAEs. It was mentioned earlier, either the CNO or maybe it was during Admiral Skillman's comments earlier, and that was these trade councils, where we are not abdicating or relinquishing any of our responsibilities inside the requirements, the high nine, so to speak, through those trade councils. So we'll have a voice, and again, as a resource sponsor, that makes me comfortable that the resources won't be moved around without OPNAV at least having a say in the matter.
Thanks.
Thank
All
you.
right. So this will be the last question, and then a warning to my fellow panelists up here is that we'll have like a quick roundup. Make sure that there wasn't something that was intended to be said or a point that needs to get reemphasized. So that's the warn. But now to the last question.
Hi, Trevor Kolinsky from University of Michigan, Bridge Program, Naval Architecture and Marine Engineering Department. So you mentioned in the development of the medium landing ship, you mentioned the use of apparent design to reduce risk. How has the Navy thought about the level of change to apparent design and the impact that might have on risk?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. What we're starting out with a design, a build-to-print design. As things evolve, again, we're trying to deliver a ship quickly, affordably, that will meet the Marine Corps' requirements. As the ship evolves, as we start to get into the building phase, things will change, right? We will likely procure everything we need for that ship up front, but over time, new requirements will likely, there will be new requirements that the ship has to have some swap C, space, weight, power to support new requirements. But again, it's a commercial design. It's not going to be a very complex ship, but it will have space and weight to be able to support future missions. That answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I
So,
think,
sorry.
real quick, I think just in general, what we're looking at from that perspective is stable demand, stable requirements to get the capability produced and into the hands of the operator with a plan to upgrade at key intervals, but not consistent. So we're going to have some requirements, appetite suppression to stay stable so that it can be produced, and then find the right spot to insert that next capability to provide that added capability going forward.
Right. Great to see you from University of Michigan. All right, so we'll go from David. We'll start from you and work up this way for any closing thoughts. Any parting thoughts? Anything points you want to make in closing?
No, thanks again, Brent, for this opportunity to speak. For AFCEA, the Naval Institute, it's a really important time for expeditionary warfare. We punch above our weight. We're one of the smallest resource sponsors, but hopefully you've gleaned a little bit more about the breadth and depth of what we do in expeditionary warfare, and again, we're embarking on a journey, and especially with this new ship that we're developing. And we're looking forward to partnering with industry. It's as was stated earlier, it's a total team effort, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you going forward.
Okay, thanks, Brent. It's been awesome to be here as part of the Designing the Fleet to Meet the Mission. When we talk about fleet design, it is easy to get lost in program specifics, but let's be clear about what the 2026 NDS demands of us. Defend America, restore peace through strength. The CNO's fighting instructions provide the blueprint to do just that. To the industry partners in this room, we are here to work this aggressively together. We need to maintain a ready force today, combat surge ready, carrier strike groups, ISR capability, nuclear command and control, and we need to innovate into the future. Capabilities like MACE, MQ-25, 6th generation fighters, CCAs, fielded at speed. And we need this so that our main battle force, our carrier strike groups, can do what they were built to do, serve as the hard backstop of American power and deliver decisive lethality. We need systems that deliver differentiated value today, not perfection tomorrow, as you heard. And if we get this right, if we act with the urgency and align the foundry with the fleet, we'll deliver a force that doesn't just look good on paper. We'll deliver a force that is combat surge ready, capable of assuring our allies, deterring our adversaries, and if necessary, fighting and winning. Thank you for the conversation, thank you for the partnership, and thank you for what you do to keep our Navy ready. Thank you very much.
All right, again, yes, I agree everything they both said. It's been a great panel. Appreciate the questions. So I think in closing, what I would say is, we are focused on platforms and widgets and things, but remember, and just as a CNO said, I mean, our ultimate advantage is our sailors, and so we need to make sure that we connect them with industries. You deliver things so they're ready to implement it and use it. They give you the feedback, you make the adjustments, and they can roll it out and be effective on day one. We have the strategy in place. We have the approach in place with Global Fleet Initiative. We're getting the funding in place, and we are moving out. And I think from our perspective, the biggest thing I'm excited about is the requirements reform, the ability to kind of get these stable requirements, to be able to have these discussions of what's available today, what can we get tomorrow, and really open up the opportunity for both the warfighter and industry to help us guide what we need to go deliver. And that delivery then will support, deterring aggression and defending the homeland. So thank you.
All right. So the final, as the moderator, just to wrap up a few things, we didn't touch on quantity. We talked about the requirements and maybe what the requirements might lead to. One thing I would point to, again, as something like the Golden Fleet, which is really the next iteration of a long history of the Navy assessing and making a study as to what the numbers and the classes of ships should be. At the Heritage Foundation, where I came from, because of my experience, we never had long-term prolonged warfare campaign analysis when I was still in uniform. We've actually done that. It's called tidal wave. For those of you in the industry, to try to figure out what the size of some of these demand for key class of ships and also aircraft, I definitely go look that up. It's called tidal wave at the Heritage Foundation. I think it's already being used by government right now to inform some of these discussions. It's heartening to hear the destroyer tender kind of idea brought up by David, and I want to mention that. That's, I think, a necessary complement for at-sea rearming for VLS. The SSNX appears to be continuing the traditions and the focus that the submarines are the apex predator. So I'm very heartened by that. And also, Admiral Washi, your comments also, clearly the unmanned platforms will be an augment, but not just an assistant or a sensor, but also with added lethality, and to get to outstick the Chinese and the fight in the future in the Pacific. So again, thank you. It was an honor to be your moderator, and I hope everyone in the audience got a lot out of this, and I will stop talking now. Thank you.
All right. Brent and members of the panel, thank you very much for taking time to join us today. On behalf of AFC International and the Naval Institute Press, I'd like to present each of you with a token of our appreciation, a book published recently by Naval Institute Press called Planning for War at Sea, edited by Evan Wilson and Paul Kennedy. I have a copy for each of you. I'll hand it out here in a moment. If any of you would like to take advantage of Brent's presence and ask him any additional questions you might have for him, he'll be at the Naval Institute Press booth today at 3:30 signing copies of both of his books, Naval Power in Action and U.S. Naval Power in the 21st Century. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for joining us this morning and let you know that lunch is currently being served in both exhibit areas and is open to all attendees. Thank you to Plexus for sponsoring today's lunch, and thanks again for Mantech to sponsoring this panel. Thank you again, and have a nice day.